When asked if someone told 50 Cent if the energy there was off or if he went to something that felt odd, 50 replied, "He asked to take me shopping. I thought that was the weirdest stuff in the world because that might be something that a man says to a woman." He would go on to say, "From that, I wasn't comfortable around him." 50 Cent would go on to discuss the brutal hotel surveillance video released in May, which showed the Bad Boy founder horrifically attacking his ex-girlfriend Cassie. That incident was mentioned in
The courtroom air was thick with tension as the judge prepared to deliver the words that would end Diddy's reign of untouchable power. Cameras were fixed, the jury stone-faced, and the world outside held its breath. Then, with deliberate precision, the judge read out the sentence, a shocking, disturbing prison term that no amount of
about the brutal video, saying first he denied that even happened, and then the tape comes out, so that means everything that N-word says is a lie. When someone watches that, if they have a daughter and they can imagine her being under those circumstances, that stuff is crazy. Like they let him get away with it. With all the influence and power you have, the person you're with is supposed to be a part of your life, not be forced. 50 Cent has long touted his plans to make a docuseries about his longtime rival. When asked what made 50 want to produce the series, he replied in part, "I'm the only one from hip-hop culture that's produced quality projects." 50 Cent and Diddy have collaborated on a few songs together, and when 50 was an unsigned rapper more than 20 years ago, he used to ghostwrite for the Bad Boy founder. But 50 Cent made it clear the two just worked together. He replied in part, "I wouldn't call it a friendship because there would be disappointment between us if we didn't speak to each other. There's points that we work together." 50 Cent would go on to credit Jennifer Lopez, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, who 50 Cent said told Diddy he would work with him as a songwriter in the beginning of his career. 50 Cent said this occurred when he was getting back to work after being shot several times in May of 2000. He would recall, though, one time when Diddy called and 50's oldest son's mother answered the phone and 50 refused to talk to Diddy. 50 would go on to say he didn't want to answer the phone because he didn't want to ever party or hang out with him. He replied, "Puff is a business person. When people call him a producer, I see people that were taken advantage of who produced things that he took from them. He got credit. He's not a producer. He's been able to take advantage of the business and the creatives in it. I don't have any."
And in that moment, Diddy didn't just flinch, he broke. He cried out in anger, his voice echoing through the chamber, shaking the silence like a man watching his empire collapse in real time. This wasn't the polished mogul the public was used to. This wasn't the confident producer flashing smiles on red carpets. This was a man cornered, stripped of control, and forced to confront the brutal reality that justice had finally caught up to him. Witnesses in the courtroom say Diddy slammed his fists against the table, tears mixed with rage as he shouted at the judge, accusing the system of betrayal, screaming that the world would regret turning on him. But no one flinched. Not the jurors, not the lawyers, not even the judge. The verdict was final, and the sentence was unforgiving. The evidence against him had been overwhelming. Testimonies from former employees, leaked recordings, financial documents detailing hush payments, and chilling stories of violent abuse that painted a picture darker than even the wildest rumors suggested. The trial had
Jane was saying that she had told Diddy that we were just talking about this, that being the sexual trauma that she experienced, and then obviously with Cassie's lawsuit, it really brought out more things. And then Diddy's on this recording saying, "Well, you bought me the videotape to look at what we do. Can you get some sleep and we'll talk to you later, or later talk to KK. I need your support, please. If you need anything, call." He said, "I need your support, please. If you need anything else, call KK." And then Jane and Diddy spoke on the phone that day. We hear another recording from the same day, November 19th of 2023, still same instance where Jane didn't know she was being recorded, and Diddy can be heard on this recording saying, "I really need your friendship right now. I called you back to make sure you're breathing. You know you don't have to worry about nothing else," and nothing else implying about her rent, her financial situation. And then Diddy said, "Please pray for me. I'll pray for you. I need your friendship." And so it was kind of interesting to hear this. I mean, you know, for us in the press and the media, we've all heard Diddy's voice. I think for the jurors, I'm always wondering what's going on in their head when they're hearing this recording, because as much as, you know, the defendant was a little animated sometimes prior to the judge kind of admonishing him, you really never hear from him. And so I'm wondering all the time when we hear him through his mouth, through his words, allegedly, I'm always wondering what's kind of going through their mind as they're kind of hearing this. But from what I even saw of them, Jesse, it seemed like they were just kind of listening to all of this listening to this and taking it all in.
Well, I wonder if an argument could be made that will be probably made by the prosecution. He did this purposely because he had consciousness of guilt. He knew the Cassie lawsuit. He knew other people could come forward and say something. and he was basically trying to have her on tape, maybe acting like he didn't know this was being recorded, but having her on tape, taking notes. Everything was consensual. This was just freaky, right? We're all good. You know, I'm here for you. You know, again, that could backfire and be quite problematic in the eyes of the jury. Him recognizing that he needs to get everybody else on the same page to say that nothing bad happened, and that, you know, because he realizes that this could be quite problematic. And it seems to me, because we found out that she was basically with him until weeks before his arrest, she was there for another important event. Didn't she testify that she was there when CNN published the hotel surveillance footage of him purportedly beating up Cassie Ventura, and was also there for his planned response, and was also there, or was, I mean, I think it came out today, his Instagram apology that he released 2 days after the tape was published by CNN. She was a part of all that, right? She was there for all that.
Yeah, honestly, Jesse, in my notes, when they finally played the apology video that I've been thinking that they were going to play possibly even on day one of trial, I wrote finally, literally finally with 4 exclamation points, because I'm like, when are they going to show the jury this apology video? But yes, around this time, it was May of 2024.
Exposing the so-called freak-off events, the manipulation, the violence, and the cover-ups, and when the final gavel hit, it wasn't just a legal decision, it was a cultural reckoning. Outside the courthouse, fans and protesters clashed. Some still clung to the music, crying out that the man who gave them anthems couldn't possibly be guilty of such horrors. But others carried signs demanding justice, demanding accountability, demanding that no star be too powerful to fall. Social media exploded instantly. Hashtags like hashtag Diddy sentenced and hashtag justice for survivors shot to the top of trending lists worldwide. Memes spread. Videos replayed his courtroom outburst, and commentators debated whether this was the single most dramatic downfall in hip-hop history. Meanwhile, the industry began severing ties in real time. Executives pulled contracts, labels scrubbed credits, sponsors rushed to release statements distancing themselves from him. Collaborators who once called him a brother quietly deleted photos and tweets.
And again, these are the center of the racketeering charge, the elaborate sexual episodes. They are center of the sex trafficking charge, that she was trafficked to engage in commercial sex acts. And she testified that these voyeuristic sexual episodes of her having sex with escorts in front of Combs, that this was introduced to her within the first year of their relationship. It was defined by, as she claimed, Astroglide, this lubricant, baby oil. She testified how these happened at multiple hotels and locations. Travel component is important. She testified how she tried to avoid kissing, but Combs told her she had to kiss the escorts, how these would happen weekly, they were so frequent, how she voiced her objections to the freak-offs. In fact, there was an email that was presented in court that Ventura and prosecutor Emily Johnson read back and forth. It was between Combs and Ventura, and she apparently writes Combs how she wants to have sex with him, and he apparently responded, "So who you going to bleep? Want to call someone?" And she responds to the effect that she wants to have sex with him. And he says, "Are you crazy?" And she ends up messaging him, "I want to talk to you about something tomorrow, going to sleep, love you." Combs apparently responds back, "Is it going to stress me out? What is it about?" And Ventura responds, "Freak off, it can wait, it's not a big deal." Combs responds, "Now you don't want to do it anymore." "Oh, I already know. You're so predictable." And actually, in another message to Combs, she apparently wrote to him regarding the freak-offs, "This is all we do." And what she claims she went through was horrific. Allegations that Combs had an escort urinate on her, that she began to choke because of the sheer amount of urine. Another allegation regarding Combs' nipples that I don't even want to get into. Yesterday, she even testified that she had to have freak-offs when she had UTIs or sores in her mouth. Now, Anthony, these are lurid, disgusting descriptions, but these are important for purposes of sex trafficking, right?
Absolutely. I think it goes to show that these are the type of acts that Ms. Ventura is not going to willingly and consensually engage in, right? And I think a lot of what the defense is going to argue is that this was part of a swinger lifestyle and a swinger relationship that she willingly participated in. But these are not normal sex acts that even in the cases I've handled that involve swingers, that swingers would participate in. And additionally, it's let's be honest, it goes to the heart and emotion of the jurors that are going to be deciding guilt innocence in this case. And so it's extremely important for the prosecution to get that point across.
And particularly that these were with sex workers. That's what makes it the sex trafficking component. And I think I have to say, the jury might be confronted with a question: how on earth can anyone have consented to this? But look, the defense will talk about the length of this this relationship and whether or not she didn't agree to any of this. And here's what's interesting. So a lot of what she said is almost verbatim to what she described in her initial lawsuit, or the complaint that she filed against Sean Combs back in November of 2023. But the key to this, and what purportedly makes this a crime and goes beyond just kinky sex, is force, fraud, coercion. And she explained that while she first agreed to make Sean Combs happy, her partner, she claims this all escalated and she voiced her objections. And I would say to further force or coercion, because the idea is, why didn't you stop this? She testified how she fought back, and she claimed it would make him more violent. But Ventura testified, he would smash me in my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head if I was down. When asked how frequently was Sean physical with you during your relationship, she responded, too frequently. She was asked, were you ever injured as a result of these incidents? She replied, yes. I would get knots in my forehead, busted lips, swollen lips, black eyes. The whites of my eyes would be red, bruises all over my body, just depending. And yesterday she testified that Combs threw her into a bed frame, and the jury apparently even saw a photo of her eye afterwards. She sent it apparently to Combs, telling him so that he would remember what he did. And apparently there was another communication from D-Rock, this is one of Combs' security guards, where he claimed she needed to ice her face because she...
Even longtime allies went silent, unwilling to be pulled down with him. In a matter of hours, Diddy's billion-dollar empire looked like rubble, and his carefully curated image had been reduced to a mugshot and a viral clip of his rage-filled breakdown. But the most haunting part isn't what happened in court, it's what comes next. Legal insiders suggest that this sentence could just be the beginning. More investigations are rumored to be underway, more subpoenas being prepared, more potential co-conspirators being identified. Prosecutors hinted that Diddy's conviction could open the floodgates to others in his circle who enabled, ignored, or even participated in his darker dealings. If that's true, the ripple effect could consume the entire industry. For now, Diddy sits awaiting transfer, his cries of anger still ringing in the ears of those who witnessed it. No more private jets, no more luxury mansions, no more entourages shielding him from consequence. Just the cold reality of prison walls and the haunting knowledge that the world now sees him not as a legend, but as a cautionary tale. This is more than a verdict. This is a cultural breaking point, the moment where fame, fortune, and fear could no longer silence the truth. And as Diddy's tears of anger turned to shouts of defiance, the world was reminded of one
up in Mount Vernon, New York, just about 20 miles away. And even though they both had success in music, they both rose to fame representing the city of New York and the rap scene there, they have been longtime rivals. In 2006, 50 Cent released a diss track about Diddy. So almost 20 years ago, this goes back a long way. And in that diss track, he says, quote, who shot Biggie Smalls? We don't get them. They gon' kill us all. Man, Puffy, know who hit that expletive? Man, that expletive soft. Now 50 is accusing Combs there of knowing who killed his friend, the notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace. Wallace and Puffy were incredibly close, but Wallace was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles in 1997, and no one has ever been charged for pulling the trigger. This all happened during really the height of the East Coast-West Coast rap rivalry of the 90s, which involved Suge Knight, who we mentioned earlier. 50 Cent has also accused Diddy of orchestrating the murder of death row rapper Tupac Shakur, who died in 1996 in a Las Vegas drive-by shooting. This is Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. He was arrested in September 2023, and he is the only person facing charges related to Tupac's murder. But 50 Cent has continued to push the allegation that Sean Combs either knows something or did something for Tupac to end up dead, though Diddy has denied that. But in a 2023 Instagram post, 50 wrote, damn, so Pac got lined by brother love, LOL, time to lawyer up, expletive might get sticky, with a pic of Suge Knight in a car with Tupac. Diddy, who has a lot of names, Puff Daddy, Puffy, Puff, and brother love is one of those other names. Now from Diddy's side of things, again, he's denied having anything to do with Tupac's murder, and he's also denied having anything to do with Christopher Wallace's death, and he's denied publicly having issues with with 50 Cent. Here's what Combs said when he was asked about a beef with 50 in a 2018 interview with the radio show The Breakfast Club, Power 105.1 FM.
Hey, yo, I don't have no beef with I don't know why. With Fifth. He loves me. He loves me.
Do y'all really
can't
have
see
a
it?
beef?
I mean, y'all can't see it.
No, we can't see it.
Y'all can't see
man.
that he loves me?
But see,
you really think that's hate?
If you look at 50's social media, you can see he has a lot of posts about Diddy. And this is what he posted the day that federal agents in Miami raided Combs' mansion ahead of his arrest on the charges that he's now on trial for. 50 Cent posted on X, "Now it's not Diddy do it, it's Diddy done. They don't come like that unless they got a case." 50 Cent also included a link to his G-Unit clothing brand in that post. While Diddy in the Breakfast Club clip said that 50 Cent actually loves him and there was never a beef, on the stand this week, Capricorn Clark said otherwise. Clark said that she was at this press event at MTV with Diddy and 50 Cent was also there, all of this happening in New York.
The trial itself had been nothing short of a spectacle. Every day brought new headlines, new testimonies, new revelations that ripped apart the mythology Diddy had spent decades constructing. What was once whispered in dark corners of the industry was now spoken openly under oath, broadcast for the entire world to hear. Former assistants described nights of chaos. Security guards recalled violent outbursts and hushed phone calls. Anonymous insiders came forward with details of contracts designed to silence victims. It was a slow, painful dismantling of a legacy that had once seemed untouchable. As each piece of evidence was laid bare, you could see the fear growing in Diddy's eyes. Gone was the smug confidence of a man who believed his wealth could buy him immunity. In its place was desperation, whispers to his attorneys, frantic scribbles on legal pads, nervous glances at the jury. Those who were there say it was like watching a king stripped of his crown in real time. Every exhibit, every testimony was another jewel ripped from that crown, another reminder that the throne he sat on was built on quicksand. What broke the case wide open were the documents, financial trails of hush payments made to silence accusers, emails instructing staff to keep certain events off the books, private flight records lining up perfectly with the night survivors claimed they were flown out to his notorious gatherings. These weren't coincidences, they were patterns, patterns of abuse, patterns of concealment, patterns of control. When the judge announced the sentence, those patterns came crashing down on him all at once. Witnesses described the sound of his voice, a cry of both rage and despair, as he realized there was no escape this time. The system he thought he owned had finally turned its back on him. The courtroom officer stood ready as his bodyguards sat frozen, powerless. The man who once controlled boardrooms and music charts now couldn't control his own temper. Social media didn't wait to react. Within minutes, millions had seen the clip of his courtroom explosion. Influencers dissected his every word. News outlets played his meltdown on loop.
Boss, but this was a racketeer who was running a criminal enterprise.
Yeah, and I think the forced labor issue. I think they've done an excellent job with that. With the transcripts I've been reading, a lot of the people are saying that they worked for 20 hours. Like that's the magic number, 20 hours straight. They, on a good day, we heard you'll get 4 hours of sleep. On a bad day, you'll get 4 hours of sleep. I think one of the what is it? A bodyguard said, if you sleep, you're getting fired. Like it was more rhythmic than that. I don't know, but you couldn't sleep around him, and I think that's what we saw with making the band. But again, we really didn't believe it. We thought it was for entertainment purposes. We didn't think someone could really act like this. And if an employee gave any pushback, they would either be terminated or they'd be threatened with reputational damage. They would be threatened with being blackballed, or they actually would be blackballed. And I think the government is doing an excellent job of proving forced labor.
And on that forced labor part, because on one hand, and I found it interesting, like George Kaplan, who is a former personal assistant for Diddy, like detailed all these, witnessing the abuse, he said, of Cassie. And then he was someone who would start work at 9:30 in the morning. And I think he said sometimes he went home at 7 o'clock in the morning the next day. And that's just what it was like. And he still, at the end of his testimony, said something along the lines of, he respects Diddy as this business person. In the eyes of the law and in this trial, what's the line between, well, this was a guy who just worked his employees really hard, to the point of where it was a forced labor issue where he was breaking the law?
So I think the perfect forced labor issue is I think Mia's testimony that we read through today, and I think it's really easy for someone to say, "Well, hey, why don't you just leave?" Well, one of the elements with forced labor is if you leave, you're threatened with reputational damage, you're threatened with being blackballed, you're threatened with psychological manipulation. So I think that's a perfect example with respect to Kaplan's testimony. I think the what was so important is when he said toward the end of his testimony, I believe, that Diddy's call him a god amongst men. Well, how did he become a god amongst men? Did he use his enterprise? Did he use his influence? Did he use coercion? Did he use threats? Did he use violence to become a god amongst men? So I think, whereas a lot of people may think that that was really flattering toward Diddy, I thought that that was more damaging than anything because of what he did to become a god amongst men. Does that make sense to you?
No, it does. And that's an interesting way to look at
Yeah.
it, because at the end of Kaplan's testimony, we did a show specifically, and I found it interesting because, like, really in the grand scheme of all the witnesses, George Kaplan's probably, by the end of this, someone that we may not even remember his name. But
Mhm.
I just found it interesting where he was worked so hard. He was cleaning up the hotel rooms, and talked about all the baby oil and stuff that he was cleaning up in the hotel room. So you're just like, what kind of job is this? And then at the end, he's still like, yeah, it was almost, he was trying to be complimentary.
Fans argued in comment sections, some in disbelief, others declaring long overdue justice. The digital world turned his outburst into both a meme and a moment of history. It was no longer just about the music, the parties, the empire. It was about accountability. For the industry, the message was clear: the days of shielding stars from consequences might finally be over. Executives who once looked the other way scrambled to cover their tracks. Lawyers rushed to check contracts for liability clauses. PR teams drafted emergency statements, distancing their clients from Diddy. Even fellow artists began rethinking their silence, realizing that association could mean career suicide. The ripple effect was already underway, and no one wanted to be the next name dragged into the storm. But for Diddy, the nightmare is only beginning. Legal experts warned that with sentencing done, more victims may feel safe to come forward. Prosecutors may dig deeper, uncovering even darker truths. The prison system is a far cry from the luxury Diddy is used to: no private chefs, no VIP treatment, no escape from the consequences of his own actions. He's no longer the man at the top of the pyramid. He's just another inmate, another cautionary tale, another reminder that power doesn't last forever. And perhaps that's why his cries of anger were so piercing. They weren't just about the sentence. They were about the collapse of an empire, the shattering of an illusion, the end of a carefully curated myth. For decades, Diddy convinced the world he was untouchable. But in the end, the truth was stronger than the myth, and justice was stronger than the empire he built on silence and fear. This downfall will be studied for years to come. It will be taught in law schools as a case of evidence overpowering influence. It will be debated in music circles as the most dramatic fall from grace in hip-hop history. It will be remembered by survivors as the moment when their voices finally cut through the noise of fame and money. And it will be a warning to anyone who believes their celebrity can shield them from consequences. Because in that courtroom, on that day, no one cared about his record sales, his Grammy wins, or his billion-dollar empire. They cared about the evidence. They cared about the truth. They cared about the survivors who had waited far too long for this moment.